Welcome to another episode of Days to Happy, and today we have John Dornik. John, thank you for joining us.
I appreciate it, Maurice. Thank you for the introduction.
Oh, heck yeah, man. You deserve it. And the thing is, you bring such great energy to the team itself. And I remember when I was first interviewing you, there was just that awesome connection because you could see how much this meant to you. And just being able to see that enthusiasm for it was telling. It was very good separated from that. And with that being said, I'm wondering if you would be willing to share a little
Yeah,
bit about what not only what we talked about, but your journey as a whole.
yeah, for sure. This one's less in a interview to get the job style, so I can be a little more transparent in my story. So I'm excited for that. And yeah, it's a story that I don't really get to tell that often. So it's really cool to be able to actually tell it at a in a work setting. You transparently, like in my professional, you just wouldn't think you would tell a transparent mental health story professionally just growing up. I grew up in a kind of like more of an Irish Catholic like culture where mental health just wasn't necessarily anything that was talked about on a broader scale. My family would talk about it internally, but it wasn't very open. So it's really cool, and I'm glad that I found myself here. That being said, my journey, as everyone's, it starts when I was born, and there were all these patterns that I learned through society, culture, all these different moving parts. But I didn't really realize that was my story until some like health issues really started to get in the way of my goals and just my day-to-day life. I was a dumb kid who thought he was like indestructible. So I got a lot of injuries. I was constantly going to ending up in the doctor, ending up like breaking bones, breaking like tearing ligaments, and then the worst ones, a handful of pretty bad like head injuries. But the list is I actually have it bulleted out, but the amount of times my parents were sick of bringing me to the hospital. Luckily, they had good health insurance. A lot of injuries, and I thought, oh, injury, heal, get better. And then around the time of like college, when I first went away to college, I started getting like these just chronic nerve pain issues and didn't really understand what it was. But I was taught the concept of acute pain and acute injuries. That's what they teach us in school. You get an injury, you rest, ice,
Yep.
something elevate, whatever
Yep.
the C is,
Yep.
clean. No, that wouldn't
No.
make sense. That's
Cold. There it is. Yes.
yeah. And I do like physical therapy, and then eventually this kept like stacking up, and then eventually like just chronic pain was like spreading through mostly all of my body, and so but then I graduated college, and I did like the Peace Corps, where it was like my just active rebellion, so to speak. Got like a job at a desk, and then went to the Peace Corps, and then my pain started to get really bad while I was down there through a couple like just different incidents, and then came home and got a job in like corporate America working for Oracle, which was a great place to start my career. Gave me a jump in like tech sales. I worked there as an SDR, and then eventually got promoted to being an account executive, moving to Austin, Texas, and was distracting myself from this internal struggle that I was having with like social life, just going out, living in Austin, working, trying to make money. And then, like everyone's kind of story, COVID rolls around and takes just a shift in how things are going. My day to day shifted drastically. Working inside, habits just changed, and eventually, this pain down my leg starts to get a lot worse.
Mm.
So I eventually go to a neurologist, and so I went to a lot of Western medicine doctors, like orthopedists, like you name it. The amount of doctors that I saw in this time frame while I was like insured by Oracle and had time to try to figure this out was ridiculous. But the Western medicine model, you go to a doctor, and I didn't know this at the time. These are all things I've learned now, but their job is to give you a diagnosis. That's what they do. Hey, you
Sure.
have this, you have a broken there. And I have this list of all these diagnoses I've gotten from MRIs, from all these things, but like none of it really made sense to me. Each doctor would tell you a different thing, but at the end they would give you a diagnosis. And I, at the time, those were the only things that the only people that I could consult with because I didn't really understand. No one understood. But then finally I saw a neurologist who diagnosed me with like this small fiber neuropathy and this, and then thought they had like a host of a handful of like neurological disorders. I hear that. And there's a list of a couple other things that they said by process of elimination they thought I could have, which I hear that and my brain's what goes into fight or flight. And so
Yeah.
this is before I'd never done therapy. I thought I thought things like that were, I just, I didn't think that was for me. So I'd learned that I have this, what I thought was this neurological disease, and I do what any normal person would do in the 21st century and start to Google what it is. So
Yeah.
and then you look it up, and of course you get funneled to the most severe cases, and
Right.
it's like you're going to end up in a wheelchair. You're going to end up like this. Your fingers will start tingling. You'll start to get XYZ, and then I would read a symptom, and then it would pop up on my body, and I'm like, oh, then confirmation, like I must have this is insane.
Sure.
So I'm like, I get pretty like internally like depressed, pretty much. Oh, there goes my life. I Everything was so great for me, and I look back and I'm like, God, I haven't made besides this pain. So I get on the wait list at like the Mayo Clinic, and then I'd exhausted all my resources with Western medicine, I thought. So I was lucky and fortunate enough to be able to take a trip over far, like to the Far East, because that's where everyone goes to heal is to like India and
Sure.
various places. So I went and did a pretty long adventure after quitting Oracle, or after leaving Oracle to just go learn about like how to heal internally as opposed to like healing symptoms. But I'd come to peace with the fact that I had this just disorder. It was just a bad roll of the dice. But then I got to live this amazing, beautiful journey that I never would have done unless I had thought that I would have never been able to do it. I made a bucket list of all the places that I wanted to go. Went to like Mount Everest, saw like the Taj Mahal, did like the Hao Zhang Loop in Vietnam. I'm fascinated by a lot of different cultural parts of Asia. And I went to go do all those things for just by myself, and it was just like this beautiful adventure, just trying to learn, and then also learning from different Eastern teachers, which is what introduced me to like more Eastern philosophies, which was my first exposure to like what would eventually turn into a more mindfulness, like therapy practice, because a lot of Eastern like Buddhism, there's so many parallels with modern day psychotherapy, I've gathered.
Yeah.
So I go have this awesome adventure and come back, body's still in pain. I'm grateful for the adventure. Go to the Mayo Clinic and get all these tests done. And they're like, "Oh, you don't have this." And you take all these tests. And I'm like, "What the?" I'm like, "What the F word?" I'm like, "This is ridiculous. How come?" I'm starting to feel it. I read all these things and then I felt it and then this and that. And they're like, no, you're good. You have the healthy blood, healthy this, you're eating healthy, you have all that. Like you're 27, healthy, you're good. And I'm like, I actually get like mad. I'm like, no, there's something going on here. There has to be. And
Yeah.
so I get back into real life. I was luckily able to take this break and eventually run into a doctor who was less traditional, and she introduced me to this concept of like psychosomatic
Yeah.
mind body, the connection of the mind and the body. And I read a couple of these books. There's this guy, his name's John Sarno. He was a doctor at New York University in like the 1980s who like introduced this idea of most chronic ailments are psychosomatic, but the Western medicine model doesn't necessarily like profit off of treating people this way. And there's a bunch of different routes to go down where it can be a conspiracy. But for my specific circumstance, it just didn't make sense until I read these books, and like a lot of my personality type and just the way that I operated and the way that I thought aligned with people who have this psychosomatic like mind body condition. And I went back and connected all these chronic pain ailments that aligned with certain stressful events in my life. And to me, on paper, like the rational, scientifically trained version of my brain was thought that was like woo. And I instantly canceled that out because I was like, I'm a man of science. I believe in biology. And so these things didn't make sense. And then with the help of first a therapist that helped me go back and unpack. So my first question, the first time I saw a therapist who understood this mind body stuff, their first question is like, hey, tell me about your childhood. And I'm like, it was perfect. It was good. Like nothing to talk about there, which that's everyone, like everyone's life experience. There are things that are, it just showed like how much because on paper, I had the best childhood. My parents are amazing. My family was amazing. I grew up in a beautiful household, but there were little things that like trained my brain to react and operate in a certain kind of like neurotic way. And so eventually that started to fire these signals to, instead of tracking for a threat externally, it would be tracking for a threat internally. And then so my brain eventually started like operating off of like faulty data. Um,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so
Yes.
yeah, and so basically through unpacking childhood, till you can figure out your personality type like through just by just unpacking your growth as that's a nurture of when you're born and when you grew up. So understanding why I operate the way that I am, and then why I'm acting like, or why I continue to have these symptoms now. So through like therapy and just all these different modalities and learning mindfulness, I was able to really start to understand it and begin my like journey of healing, you would
Right.
say. And so that eventually led me to being like, okay, my skill set is or I'm trained in like tech and like sales. So I ended up working at a company called Headway, which is another kind of mental health startup, but was there for a couple of years. And then eventually it led me to here. But one thing that's really cool, and I'm at a point now where I look back at my journey and I'm grateful for it. It's part of, I got to live my dream, go through all these things, end up in a career path that I think is awesome. But it's funny because I like use Ava, our just like meant like our chat buddy, and I've just for fun, I've dumped in all the information from my past and what my my issue my issues have been and like all the symptoms that I've had, and instantly like AI is able to be like, oh, this is a mind body condition.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I would have known that right away if I was able to talk with like ChatGPT. If AI existed when all this started, having someone to talk to, but I'm glad it didn't, because then I wouldn't have had things the way that I did. But now I've built like a custom GPT, and I've dumped all of my like health stuff into there. And now I have a personal assistant to like help if I wake up and I have a pain flare up or something like that.
Yeah.
Someone to not get me back into that pain fear cycle that I'm so used to being in. And it'll never replace like the traditional therapy component, but it's been
Yeah.
such a freaking awesome addition to like just being like my positive coach like all the time, because you wake up every day, even if you know everything's okay, your brain's going to be scanning for threats.
Yes.
And it's nice to have a voice reassuring you, being like, no, you're doing it again.
Yeah.
This threat stuff. So that's a quick
Yes.
elevator pitch of my story, or just a quick, yeah, recap of what my story is. There's a lot of different components there, but that's my monologue.
I love it. The reason I love it is because you gave me an understanding of how to utilize the Days of Happy. And I know this is a podcast and story about you, but I've never even looked at it from that point of view. It's just a simple questions and things that you can just pass by something that when you don't have a counselor on hand, and it's just a quick level set, if you will. And
Yeah,
just that was interesting, man.
yeah, and I can give you like a better example. Like, so this is what's so cool. I put together this really long document of just to that I would bring to all the doctors that I went and saw.
Uh-huh.
And it would overwhelm them. Be like, I have an MRI of this. I have this symptom here. I have that here. And it's probably 6 pages long. And I remember this feeling that was all too familiar. Is like this feeling of like shame. Like I look like a pretty healthy individual. Walking into like a doctor and be like, I have all these symptoms. There was this feeling of like shame that I would have. And they'd
Mhm.
look at them and be like, huh, this, and if they're not educated in this mind body syndrome, then they don't know how to respond to something like that. So they
Right.
respond the best they can with their medical degree education, which is okay, let's dissect this and try to figure out what's going on. And obviously pick up on one thing, connect to that, build a plan from there. But they don't have the super intelligence knowledge to look at all of this and compare it to every other data point out there. And
Yeah.
then the first second that I dump this same document into like a custom GPT, like through Ava, the same thing could be done through like Claude, ChatGPT, whatever. If you built one with like your own, it looks at it, it's, oh, this is chronic regional pain syndrome. This is mind body syndrome. Like all these things align. Instead of taking that, like the decision tree to like Western medicine, it would be like, oh no, this is an overactive sympathetic nervous system. You're
Yeah.
just, and that's it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it took me 6 years building fear, going to places, showing people this document, terrified, ashamed, being like, what's going on with me? What the hell? And it's part of it, part of like my journey, but it gives me like hope. And you see it out there. Like so many people are self-diagnosing and it takes I don't know, it's just, it's very cool and like very exciting. And then also another really big component, like that I mentioned was like the shame that I felt like
Yes.
man in society showing weakness, showing fear. That's not a good thing. So I go in and now add to it. That makes you feel more defense, that more makes your body feel more scared, and which in turn would create this pain fear cycle and create more. So that tangent, I'm not sure if it made sense, but it's just, it's really cool and gives me hope that a lot of people who have similar issues will be able to come to these different conclusions through a different route than I like had to.
Yeah. Yeah. And the accessibility too. That's what
Yeah.
makes it so easy to really. I've done it before where I've asked a simple question. I go, oh, that makes sense. And
Yeah.
it was pretty neat. It was pretty neat. A lot of wisdom in something
Yeah.
that wasn't accessible before. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I really appreciate though is the fact that your willingness to put out there the vulnerabilities that you had there. Always easy to talk about things that have happened to you. But what I love again about this whole thing is that you found you found answers in a variety of different contexts. Eastern, Western medicine. The one that when you were talking about the Mayo Clinic, that just about killed me.
Yeah.
I was dying because that would have been my take too. Like, are you kidding? I waited on the wait list and now you tell me I have nothing? Come on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just and then just getting to that point where, huh, let's take another route. So I really appreciate you sharing that because that level of frustration must have been great. And oftentimes in that frustrative point, it's easy just to throw in towel and say, bag this stuff, I'll just live with it. And in actuality, you consistently did things about that. And that's a great more of a story.
Yeah. And I think there's another podcast that I listened to. I think it was called like the best, I think it's called like the best worst thing. I forget what it was. I wish I could pull out the name of it, but it's an interview with a lot of people who you always hear people say, I had a near death experience or had a cancer diagnosis or I had there's always these like really bad things. And I think our brains are structured to only change if you really need to.
Uh-huh.
And it's part of just aligning with finding like your purpose. And a lot of people, it takes some sort of struggle, whether it be like physical, mental, to really need to change. Sometimes it can be a breakup for people, but it's like our brains operate to, if things are going well,
Yep.
we don't change things because
Mhm.
they continue to go well
Yeah.
that way. So that's part of the like journey, and that's what this podcast is like, interviewing people. And it's like through that journey, Exhibit A, I've ended up at a company like Days to Happy, where it's awesome. I love the people that I work with, but not only that, I've developed healthy habits, not because I wanted to develop healthy habits, because
Mhm.
I needed to. Otherwise, I wouldn't be
Yeah.
feeling good. And so it's just cool. And it just aligns with just building like a spiritual practice too, which I think is crucial in to live a happy and fulfilled life. And I think it's not a direction I would have gone. So it's almost like something was speaking to me in the only way that I would listen.